Hello everybody, I have been thinking about making this video for a long time, and the time has come. Today, as I name it, we will be talking about dumb decks. I repeat what I said. We will be talking about dumb decks. Decks that are dumb, decks that have nothing to do with the casual Yu-Gi-Oh deck, and decks that have a dumb concept of winning. Now, as you can see, I've assembled 5 cards that represent the respective decks that are dumb, as we can all agree. You see, initially, the point of Yu-Gi-Oh is to win by having card advantage, by outplaying your opponent, by beating your opponent with attacking, by using trap cards to defend yourself, by using spell cards to give you an advantage. That is how Yu-Gi-Oh is supposed to be played. Duels should be won by opponents beating you by wiping out your life points. And in very rare cases, there should be a deck out. In rare cases, deck out should be natural, not forced. But we have some players who have the ability and they have the desire to make these decks that focus on getting those very rare win conditions and exploiting them by the use of a massive amount of cards. You see, Yu-Gi-Oh is a game that has over 5,000 printed cards, I believe. And if you have 5,000 cards, you can make a million. As a matter of fact, there's an unlimited amount of decks you could possibly think of, because of how many decks exist in Yu-Gi-Oh! Not to mention there are more being printed. So you can make a deck around anything. Not saying it's good, but you can make a deck around anything. So there's enough burn cards out there that you can make a burn deck. There's enough draw cards out there that you can make an Exodia deck. There are enough dumb cards like Morphing Jar or Needleworm that you can make a deck out deck. And there are enough cards out there that you can make an efficient stall deck. And this card here, I just put it in because it has a stupid concept of winning, but I just decided to put it in anyways, although this one isn't as popular. This used to be more popular on Yu-Gi-Oh! Eternal Duelist Soul, which is a game I used to play when I was a little kid. When you used to duel against Marek, he would use this deck, this whole Destiny board thing, and basically you have to get these letters that spell death, and if you get all 5 letters in like your back row, if you get all letters in your back row spelling death, you win, which is extremely rare to happen, but it will probably almost never happen because MST's around, everything. But you know, that's essentially how Destiny board works. Now, let's just get started, because I just had to mention that real quick because you guys are probably like, what the heck is Destiny board? It's just a stupid win condition. These decks are dumb. And I've repeated this over and over and over in this video, but I just want to point out that these decks are dumb. If you want to learn how to become a better duelist, if you want to top, if you want to be the best duelist in the world, you're not going to get any respect if you use these decks. Now, a lot of people watching this may say, well, you know, Quinn, you run a deck that's pretty freaking annoying too, and I understand that. My deck is extremely annoying. Especially to people who are not, no, especially to people who actually duel it a lot, especially my friends, because they have to deal with getting their monsters destroyed every time they attack me. Trust me, I know about it. But at least my deck has the basic elements of a deck. It has monsters, it has spells, it has traps, it has strategy, and it has a variety of things that I can do. And there's no main objective except to beat you. I can beat you with an Envoy, which I never draw. I can beat you with attacking you with the Neospatian Grand Mole. There's a million ways I can win, but my objective is to knock out your life points, gain the card advantage, and win by simply outplaying you. These decks are hard to beat, but most of all, they're annoying to beat, because these decks, they're not structured in ways that players can respond effectively. You see, if you go up against an Exodia deck, and you have two bottomless, a dimensional prison, and I'm using cards that I use as examples, because this is how bad it was. And ironically, today I dueled 3 Exodia decks, and ironically I'm making this video, but I actually managed to beat all 3 of them. As a matter of fact, I did it in matches, so it's best 2 out of 3. So I actually won 6-0 against these Exodia decks. So you're probably like, well, they suck. Well, not really, because probably those guys who made the deck suck. But, I mean, I've never had the ability to special summon Scrap Dragon, an Envoy. I had a Gores, an Interplanetary Purpley Thorny Dragon, and a Stardust on my side of the field. I've never had so much power with my deck that's so slow, but the reason I had it was because they weren't killing my monsters at all. All my monsters were essentially useless. My monsters were only necessary for attacking if possible. So all of my cards, like Bottomless Trap Hole, Dimensional Prison, Mirror Force, Grave Squirmer, Snowman Eater, all of those cards were completely useless, and I couldn't side them out because there's nothing really to side in except for Prohibition, which most people aren't smart enough to think of siding in. But, I mean, that's the only card I sided in, a Prohibition, and I sided in a Card Destruction. I mean, that's basically all I could do. I even Darkhold my own field once he had a Tragodia on his side of the field, because I'm like, it's not like you're gonna get over them anyways. So, I didn't record that duel because the duel went way too long, and I only record duels that are quick and at a maximum of 30 minutes with speeded time. And if I give a commentary, it's way too long anyways. So, once a duel gets past a certain length, I don't even think about recording it. But I've been donating my time towards making concept videos, all these thoughts that I've always thought about. So, let's quickly go over these dumb decks really quickly. Exodia, probably the oldest deck here. The concept of this deck is very, very, very simple. You get 5 pieces of Exodia in your hand, you win. Do I think that's fair? Well, I think it's a good idea for a deck. I just think the concept of the deck is annoying. Because for real duelists who have invested money into their bottomlesses, their dimensional prisons, all of these cards to stop monsters, they're going to have to deal with just nothing but stalling and drawing cards. And they're going to be drawing cards left and right too, because a lot of Exodia decks run draw cards that both players draw. So, it's really stupid if you think about the concept of it, because they're going to be playing Magical Malice, they're going to be playing Reloads, they're going to be playing all of these draw cards that are ridiculous. And that's why I think this deck is ultimately dumb. Not saying you shouldn't play it, I wouldn't, but mainly because you won't get any respect if you ever top with this deck. And the only reason these decks are somewhat good is because, number one, Yu-Gi-Oh's a game where you have a million cards to support your deck, and also because of the fact that they make a lot of cards in your deck completely useless. Needleworm. I could have used Morphing Jar to represent the picture, but I decided to use Needleworm to be, more unique. Needleworm is basically used in decks that are essentially designed to make you deck out. I'm pretty sure many people watching this video are aware of this, but there's combinations where you would use, I think, Book of Eclipse, I believe, and you would set like a Morphing Jar and a Needleworm, and you just keep flipping them over and then setting them again, and then keep flipping them over and just making your opponent deck out that way. By having cards like Level Limit Area, and, Scrap Iron Scarecrow, Messenger of Peace, all of these dumb cards that are basically going to stop you from attacking. So basically, your opponent can attack you, and he's probably going to run out of cards within like 5 or 6 turns. So essentially, you win by that. And honestly, do I think that's fair? No. Have I lost to these decks? Yes. Have I beaten these decks a lot? Even more. But that's not the point. The point of this video is to inform you that this deck is dumb, and anybody who thinks about using it is essentially bored or just a noob. If you really want to be a good duelist, learn how to use monsters, spells, and traps to beat your opponent. Next, Chain Burn decks. I use Chain Strike to represent it. This deck is so dumb that I think it's probably the hardest to beat out of these. I don't even know what you can consider these decks. They're not anti-meta because their decks aren't designed to beat meta decks based off of the monster structures. Like, it took me a while to realize it, but my Apocalypse deck is an anti-meta deck because it's designed to beat meta type decks based off of the cards that I use, but it's monster oriented. So I don't even know what to call these decks. The most I can say is dumb decks, and that's what I'm going to name this video. Dumb decks. This is a dumb deck because essentially, if you have nothing but cards to just burn your opponent, which you can make an entire 40 card list of, it's very hard to beat it. There's no real way to beat Chain Burn, and people don't side for these decks because it's very rare that people use them because of the fact that you won't get any respect, you won't get any recognition, and number one, you look like a noob, and plus it takes no skill. I mean, yes, I say Inzektors take no skill, but at least it's a monster-oriented deck, so you're giving your opponent the opportunity to stop you with spells, traps, and monster effects. But this deck, there's no way to stop Chain Burn, and if you waste cards in your side deck to stop a Chain Burn deck that you're never going to duel, which is very rare to duel, then you're cutting off spaces that you can potentially use to better your deck against mainstream monster decks. So that's another reason why I think decks like these are dumb. You're forcing your opponent to use cards that he doesn't want to use against dumb decks. I think out of all of these 5, I just wanted to mention, I think, in terms of what I've seen, in terms of popularity, I think Chain Burn is probably the most commonly used one, followed by Exodia, followed by Needleworm, followed by Final Countdown, and then followed by Destiny Board. And now that I think about it, I think Final Countdown is probably third, followed by Needleworm decks, followed by Destiny Board decks. Because now that I think about it, I've seen Needleworm decks, but I've actually seen more Final Countdown decks. So, next card is Final Countdown. Dumbest card ever made. I wish it was banned. I honestly wish it was. But recently I didn't put it in my ban list video. It's because it's like, who cares? I mean, there's ways to side against it with general cards like Prohibition. So if I open up with Prohibition, say no Final Countdown, my opponent's just going to say GG. But he can still just stall, but essentially he's going to lose because he's going to be using all of his resources just to protect himself. I mean, if I had 2 Prohibitions, I would say Prohibition on 1 Day of Peace and Final Countdown. That's going to stop a lot of the stalling that he will do, and essentially I'm going to win the game because he's going to have no way to really stop it, because these decks don't run cards like MST, all of these cards that you expect duels to run. So that's why they're hard to beat. And Final Countdown is a dumb card. I think it's extremely broken, but the winning conditions are so late in the future, you wouldn't expect anybody to win under these conditions. Like 20 turns, wow, that's like a century away. But, you know, when you have 50,000, cards that are designed to basically keep stalling, it's not that hard. So basically, that's Final Countdowns. Destiny Board. If somebody can make this deck successful, I would get mad because that's just another dumb deck to succeed. Destiny Board sucks. It's the worst out of these 3. I've only seen 1 duelist in unrated on Dueling Network ever use this deck, and I've always known about this deck. Don't think that guy like reminded me of this deck or something, because like I said, Eternal Duelist Soul, I used to see Merrick and Bakura used to use this deck all the time, and now I think about it, Merrick never used this deck. I apologize for that. It was Bakura. Yami Bakura always used to use this stupid Destiny Board deck, and it would always fail because he sucks, and back then a bunch of broken cards were out there. So, basically this deck sucks, nobody should use it, but it's just a dumb deck that possibly exists, and if somebody finds a way to make it good, I hate it. Anyways guys, I have talked for a good 15 minutes now. Thank you for watching my video. Please enjoy, please subscribe, and have a nice day.